Awesome. Awesome. All right. So where we're going to pick up is where we left off last week. And we're on the doctor's opinion, and it's page XXVIII. So if you're really good at converting Roman numerals to numbers and back again, that's Roman numeral 28. That's the only one that I can do in Roman numerals very quickly, because man, we're picking up on some like really exciting stuff. We're diving right into like the cycle of alcoholism. We just reviewed the allergy. We had a bit of an inappropriate metaphor with the red lobster, which some of us early got a quick review on. And so what we're going to do is we're going to pick up XXVIII. We're going to pick it up with the second full paragraph, frothy emotional appeal. All there, frothy emotional appeal. All right. So frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. I mean, that's one of those lines that I'm like, what are you talking about? So froth is like a foam, and an appeal to emotion is an appeal to like our feelings, and appealing not to our logic, not to our reason, but appealing to our heart. And it says seldom suffices. So what a frothy emotional appeal kind of looks like, and you guys can let us know if we've ever let me know if you've ever had any or received any frothy emotional appeal. It looks like, if you'd love me, you quit drinking. It looks like, how could you keep doing this to us? Don't you see that this is destroying your life? Don't you see what this is doing to our family? Can't you see how you're hurting me? That is frothy emotional appeal. And you know what it says? It says seldom suffices. And what that means is it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And here's the thing. I wanted it to work. I wasn't a psychopath or a sociopath. We're actually going to talk about the origin of the word psychopath today. But I wasn't this like psychopath. I didn't want to hurt people. I don't know about you, but I wanted frothy emotional appeal to work. I did not want to hurt the people in the ways that I was hurting people. And I don't know about you, but for me, every time I came to the morning after filled with that guilt and that shame and that remorse, when I said I never want to do it again, I meant it. I meant it. Truly and deeply, I did not want to do it again. I did not want to hurt the people in the ways that I was hurting people. Yeah, frothy, it's agitated, it's soft, it's trivial, it's insubstantial, it doesn't hold weight. And man, I wanted it to. I did not want to hurt people in the way that I was hurting people. I did not want to live the way that I was living. It didn't have the weight. And it says the message which can interest and hold these alcoholic people must have depth and weight. And what is a message of depth and weight? A message of depth and weight is, I have been there. I have gone through what you've gone through. I've experienced what you've experienced. When we talk about the allergy, I know what it's like from my own experience to start, to pick up that first drink or pick up that first drug or whatever it is, and have absolutely no control. I know what it's like to drink and to use and to burn my life to the ground. I know what that's like. And I know what it's like to say, I'm never going to do it again. And to do it again. I know what it's like to experience the mental obsession, that peculiar mental twist. I know what that's like from my experience, and I found a way out. That is a message of depth and weight. You know what's interesting is we're right in talking about step one ideas. We're talking about really the diagnostic criteria of this illness. What does it mean to be an alcoholic? What does it mean to have alcoholism? But it's pointing to something. The message which can interest and hold these alcoholic people must have depth and weight. That's part of my responsibility. My responsibility to those who have not recovered, my responsibility to those who are living in frothy emotional appeal, maybe that to themselves or by their loved ones, who do not know that there is a way out. That is my responsibility. And it says, in nearly all cases, their ideals must be grounded in a power greater than themselves if they are to recreate their lives. See, if I want to experience a new life, a new way of life, if I don't want my life to be burnt to the ground again, I need to ground myself in something deeper and something bigger than me. Ground myself. That's not about what I believe. It's about what I'm grounded in. It's about what I'm rooted in. And then this next paragraph, for a long time, I'd be like, oh, Silky. So Silkworth is Dr. Silkworth. He and I aren't close like that. I shouldn't call him Silky. He's been dead a long time. But Silkworth, Dr. Silkworth, this paragraph, I'm like, oh, Silky's getting a little defensive. Let me know if you guys can see it and read it with me. I'm getting a little defensive. Because he's saying, so Dr. Silkworth, who's the primary guy who wrote this chapter, it says, if any feel that a psychiatrist directing a hospital for alcoholics, we appear somewhat sentimental, let them stand with us while on the firing line. See the tragedies, the despairing wives, the little children. Let the solving of these problems become a part of their daily work and even of their sleeping moments. And the most cynical will not wonder that we have accepted and encouraged this movement. And see, I read that. He's talking about like, hey, they need a power greater than themselves, and then immediately defensiveness, right? And I would read it that way for a long time. But it took me a number of years to be able to see something in this, in a deeper way and in a new way. And what I began to see in a new way is, man, I've had doctors, I've had psychologists, I've had psychiatrists, I've had people try to help me. And not once did I ever think I would have kept a doctor or a psychologist or a medical professional up at night with my behavior. Not once. And man, this is a little early for a tangent, but here we go. I remember I was, I don't talk about this too often because I always want to talk about symptoms. Because man, I got a lot of denial when I came here. I tried to find all the ways I was different from you, but one of the places in which my illness took me was homelessness. And I was living on the streets of Calgary, and I was panhandling because I have a knack for looking especially sad, so it worked really well. And there was a gal who would walk by, and I didn't see her, for a long time, but I remember her coming up to me one day and saying, I didn't see you there for a while, panhandling, and I was really worried about you. It's not safe. It's not safe, young girl living on the streets. And see, I never would have considered the effect that my illness had on a complete stranger, that I might have kept her up at night. And it's a reminder that for somebody like me, man, if the world wrote my 8-step list, it might look radically different than what I put pen to paper on. And I don't know who my illness and the depth of my illness can affect. But by that same token, because that's not a whole lot of hope in this book, it gives us that hopelessness and that hope. So I'm a follow that same pattern. I don't know who my recovery can help. I don't know who my recovery can help by that same token. Man, I definitely wasn't going to tell this story today. A sponsee was sharing at a meeting on Saturday, and I wanted to go and support her. And, I was running a little bit late, and there was a gentleman who has our illness, and he was passed out, like you could kind of tell he had fallen like straight back and hit his head. And, I stopped to, get him some help. And it's a whole long story. I'll keep it short. We were like, hey, my name's Paige. And he says, I know, you're an AA. There's a random guy who was like passed out. Like, he's like, yeah, I know you. And like, I never know who I can help with my recovery. We don't know the impact that can have as well. And I don't know if he was able to make it, but we were able to figure out a ride for him to go to detox if he wanted, because he genuinely sounded open. So let's just, I wasn't planning on telling that story today. Keep coming. I don't even know what I'll share on. It'll be an adventure. Alrighty. And so it says, we feel after many years of experience, and that is the we, like him speaking as a member of the medical society, the medical fraternity, that as doctors at this time have felt, after many years of experience, that we have found nothing which has contributed more to the rehabilitation of these men than the altruistic movement now growing up among them. That altruism, and Rob, I'm sure is going to throw that in the chat, that altruism is that idea of helping other people because it's the right thing to do. And so again, we're pointing to that 12-step work. You know, one of the most sure signs that I have had a spiritual experience is the desire to go help somebody else. By the way, if you have a brain like me and you hear that and you're like, I don't really want to help other alcoholics or other addicts or whatever brings it. I haven't had a spiritual awakening. I don't have to do it. No, that's not what that means. And maybe y'all are more spiritual than me and weren't looking for all the little loopholes, but just in case you were, no loophole. No, we got to help others. It's not optional. And that's the thing, is that he's saying, as a man of science, a man who worked in his career with something like 50,000 different alcoholics, different addicts at the town's hospital, that he has found nothing which has worked better than this. And now what we're getting into is really the crux of, not the crux, that's not the right word for it, but this is step one in a nutshell, the diagnostic criteria of this illness. And what we're getting into is what's known as the cycle. And if you haven't heard of the cycle before, I don't think you'll get sick of it because it's great, but we're gonna cover it. We're gonna use this cycle to welcome the big ones and welcome the little ones. Glad you're all here. So we're going to cover this cycle and review this cycle. And man, when I can see this cycle in my life and I can see my life in the cycle, it helps me to see that, man, I have this illness, and it helps me to see that I am hopeless, that it is a cycle. And so this becomes an incredibly important part of the book. So it says, men and women, feel free to cross out men and women and write alcoholics, or what brings you to this study today. If it's addiction, write addicts. Because we ain't talking about those normal men and women. I'm not from a place that uses ain't, but I'm using it. We ain't talking about normal folk. We are talking about alcoholics. And it is alcoholics drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. I don't know about you, but for me, I am a relief-seeking missile. See, what I am after, that effect produced by alcohol. It's not like a little bubbly and I'm going to enjoy the Jets game. Thank you for coming. It's not like, I'm just going to unwind and watch the Blue Jays play. Again, thank you for coming. If you have foregone sports to come here, extra welcome. Thank you. And if you haven't forgone sports to come here, extra welcome. Thank you. But that's that effect that I'm after. Man, you let me know if you experience this. It is the ease. It is the comfort. It is the relief. It is the release. It is my skin fits for the first time. You know, that hole in the depth of my soul that's filled. You know, that screaming that comes from deep inside of you. I'm really hoping I'm not alone with that. That stops. Man, that's what I'm after. To misquote a part of our book, it is like a new world comes into view. That's what I'm after. That is not the effect that non-alcoholics get from alcohol. You know what I mean? They do not relate to that even a little bit. They don't take a drink and experience that at all. Awesome. Thank you, Rob. And it says the sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, they cannot after time differentiate the true from the false. If you're writing in your book today, why wouldn't you? It's a lot of fun. You could write mental obsession, because that's what we're talking about right there. And when we talk about that sensation, what we're talking about is that feeling, that relief, that release, that, thank goodness I'm okay. That is so elusive. To be elusive is just out of grasp. And as Rob described in the chat, hard to understand, define, grasp, isolate, pin down. It's just out of our hands. That while we admit it is injurious, I can admit that it is hurting me. I can admit that it's ruining my life. I can admit that there's consequences. I can admit that it is destroying my life in a way that I do not want it to. I can admit to you, I do not want to do it again. I can admit that. I can concede that. I can see that. I cannot after time differentiate the true from the false. And what is true for somebody like me, what's true for somebody like me is if I take a drink, and I'll be frank with you, if I take anything mind altering, there's a little switch. I got a prop. There's a little switch that goes off in the back of my head, and it tells me more, right? And I drink or use until I've burnt it to the ground. That's what's true. That is what is true for somebody like me. But what is false? What is false is this time will be different. What is false is nobody will ever know. What is false is I'll go out for 3 drinks. What is false is I'll go out for 3 days. It's, just 4. It'll be a long weekend. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. Right? A little more honest. What is false is if you were feeling the way that I was feeling, you would drink too. If you went through what I went through, you would drink too. What is false is I'm going to kill myself anyway, so why don't I get loaded? What is false is I can't drink like a lady, but I sure as heck better be able to smoke crack like a lady. I can't do anything like a lady. Those are not very ladylike, is what we're getting from this. So that is the inability to differentiate the true from the false. And that is the mental obsession. And that is what happens when I am as sober as I am today and my illness is untreated. I get that thought. That thought is a lie. I believe that lie, and off I go. I want you to know, if you're somebody like me and we're talking about that mental obsession, see, I'm trying to, close up all those loopholes. You're probably thinking, hey, Paige, I remember a time back in 84, back in 98, back in 06, back in 08, back in 2016, when I did drink like a lady. Anyone here? Or gentleman, or delightful person, that what I'm thinking of is we got some people. Yeah, good to see you. I am looking at those times, and what are they usually? They're the exception, not the rule. See, if you ask a non-alcoholic, hey, can you remember a time where you said I was going to go out for 3 drinks and then you did? They're like, every time, every time. They're not thinking about, hey, I remember this one time that happened, In fact, their exceptional stories are their drinking stories. Oh, that one time I got really drunk and did something silly. Like, oh, bless you, right? And so it's a little like, just in my experience, and we'll talk more about the allergy, it's a little like playing Russian roulette. And early in my drinking career, only an alcoholic's going to make a career out of it. Early in my career, there's only a couple bullets in the chamber. But the more that I'm doing this, the more bullets are in the chamber. By the time I end up in a place like this with wonderful people like you, every time I go out, bang, it's the allergy. And so that thought, you know what, I can do it this time. I've done so well for 3 weeks. And there was that time back in 98, I drank like a lady. That's another example of the mental obsession, because that is not reality. And it says, to them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. It's all I knew. I didn't have anything to compare it with, or anyone to compare it with. Now, I had a couple inklings. There was some stuff going on. There was some stuff about me that was abnormal, but I did not know what was wrong with me. When you come to a place like this and we go through a study, and it's like, oh, is that what it was, right? That's what it means. My alcoholic life was the only normal one. I did not know. And it says they're restless, irritable, discontent. If you're writing in your book, you can make a little note that is the spiritual malady. Absolutely. That restless, irritable, discontent. And you see, if you ask anyone when they come to a 12-step fellowship what your problem is, what are they going to say? If it's an AA meeting, they're going to say, our problem is alcohol. If it's another 12-step fellowship, my problem is drugs. My problem is addiction. Are you crazy? Like, of course, like, why would you think it's a 12-step fellowship? What else would it be? But if you ask, when do you feel restless, irritable, discontent? When do you feel like your skin doesn't fit? When do you feel like your raw, exposed nerve ending and the wind is blowing? When do you feel that hopelessness, like you can't get out of bed? When do you feel like that anxiety, like somebody is stabbing your shoulder blades? When do you feel desperate and alone? When do you feel that? It is when I'm sober. I'm sober. And then alcoholics and addicts and and compulsive overeaters or compulsive gamblers are, again, what brings you to the study today. We don't have the market on restless, irritable discontent. That can be a human experience. See, that's what in step one, we're going to emphasize. We're going to emphasize twofold in step one. We're going to look at the mental obsession and we're going to look at the physical allergy. But as we get into step two and step three and step four, we're going to look at the threefold nature. And Paige found a way to sit real right on the fence with that twofold, threefold thing. But that's just what my experience is. Right here, we're going to emphasize what's different. And then we're going to see what some of that similarities we have with other people and that pain that's driving us. Now, I want to point out restless, irritable discontent. This is a doctor who is giving his assessment of it. And what he is saying is the patient appears to be a little restless, irritable, discontent. In doctorese, that's a little polite way of saying it. You know what I mean? Like, I am dying. Oh, you know, anyone ever been happy to be here, happy to be sober? Oh, I'll take 20 more and pass it on. I'm doing fine. I'm great. Oh no, I don't need a sponsor. It's good. You know that? Yeah. And so that is that restless, irritable discontent. And that is that pain that I experience when I'm separated from substance and separated from that power greater than myself. And when I'm as sober as I am today and my illness is untreated, I can't sit in my own skin. I don't feel okay. You know, and I really do like talking about that because it's important. Because when I got to places like this, I saw people that were happy and full of joy and full of light, and they were annoying and I hated them. But I, you know, because I was not that, I was miserable. But I thought I was different because I thought they just got sober and got happy, like, woo, I'm sober. And that wasn't my experience. So I was misunderstanding. I thought it was a series of my ANDAs. You know, I'm an alcoholic ANDA or I'm an addict ANDA, like all these other things. I thought it was that. And I thought, no, this thing couldn't work for me. But to know that that is the experience of somebody who has this illness and this illness is untreated, I knew I was in the right place because I did not feel good sober. So they're restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience the sense of ease and comfort. Oh, ease and comfort, which comes at once by taking a few drinks. Oh, that's what I'm after. I'm after that ease, that comfort, that relief. And it says drinks which they see others taking with impunity. Impunity is those normal jerks. It does nothing to them. It does nothing for them. Now, I probably told this one yesterday or last week, but it's that normal jerks. Honey, I'm going to go to the bar. I'll be home by 9. I'm going to have 3 drinks. And do you know what they do? It is baffling. They go to the bar and they sit at the bar and they have 3 drinks and they're home by 9 and it's their house and they're with the person they're supposed to be with and they've got both their shoes and their pants are dry. You know? Like impunity, you know? Those normal jerks. It does nothing to them, it does nothing for them. The allergy doesn't kick off and they don't seem to get that same ease and comfort. Now, they might like to have a couple drinks and watch the Chiefs play. Thanks for coming with the sports on. But they don't experience that finally being put together. And it says after they have succumbed to the desire again. And what that means is we take that first drink, and it's as so many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops. Oh, wonderful. Yeah, that phenomenon of craving, if you're writing in your book, why wouldn't you? It's a whole lot of fun. That phenomenon of craving is the physical allergy. And as Rob says in the chat, that phenomenon is that experience. It's fact, exceptionally rare, unusual event, and succumbed, gave in, surrendered, submitted, right? After we gave into that first drink. And see, that's the thing. Oftentimes that mental obsession looks like, you know what, this time will be different. Often that mental obsession looks like nobody will ever know. Sometimes it looks like that wrestling with it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. Yes, I want to do it. No, I don't want to do it. Maybe I should just, and I give in. But regardless of what the insanity looks like, when I'm as sober as I am today, I get an insane thought. It tells me I can drink, I can pick up, I can do it. And I do. And that phenomenon of craving develops. And that's that physical allergy. And that's that thing that we were talking about last week, really diving into last week. That once I start, I need more. And the more that I have, the louder that more gets. You know, that thing like last week I was talking, I have some allergies because I am so much fun. I'm delightful. Please have me over for dinner. It's so great. I'm allergic to onions. I'm allergic to peppers. Oh, it just a friend of ours was like, I can't make it. I'm in Akron having tacos. I'm like, have some for us. Maybe not me. I cannot. Too spicy. Again, I'm a whole lot of fun. But if I get a little bit of peppers, my stomach's gonna hurt just a little bit. Now, if you're like, Paige, go to town on these bell peppers stuffed with some habaneros, I am going to die. Not actually, but a little bit. You know what I'm saying? See, the more that I engage with that or consume that which I'm allergic to, the stronger the reaction. You know that I think we did this last week. You know that bottom beer roulette, you know, at the end of the night, end of the party, you know, we're going, everyone's coupled up or passed out or made their own poor decisions, and we're going around drinking all the rest of the bottom beers, trying to avoid the one with the cigarette butts. You know what I mean? See, I'm the sort of gal that I gotta be at the liquor store at 10 minutes till 2 a.m. Why? Because that's when the liquor store closes. Because I need that next drink far more than I needed that first. I'm that one that's like, I gotta save some for the morning to get me through, and I do not. Doesn't matter how well I prepare for that morning drink, I do not get it because I drank it all. You know, once I start, I can't stop. And it says they pass through the well-known stages of a spree. And a spree sounds way more fun to read than it does to go on. Spree. And for our purposes, a spree is any length of time that I'm drinking or using. That spree, it can be days, it can be weeks, it can be months, it can be years, or it can be a single evening. That is a spree. But at some point, that spree gets arrested. Sometimes it's because I've been arrested. And you don't have to relate to that, all you law-abiding folk here at the Big Book Study. I'm just saying I do. And it gets arrested, so the spree stops and we emerge remorseful. That feeling of remorse, regret. I'm the biggest piece of garbage. I hate myself. I hate what I've done. That leads me to a firm resolution not to drink again. That's it. I'm never going to do this again. Now, again, early in our drinking or using careers, only people like us are going to make a career out of it. Yeah. But early in our careers, that might be a softer swearing off. You know, maybe I'm not going to drink and drive. Maybe I'm not going to show up drunk for court. Maybe my problem is crack cocaine, but I'm going to not touch that, but I'll be able to use other substances. Or my problem is alcohol. I'm going to go on the crack cocaine maintenance program. You know, if you're wondering, that did not go well. Just if you're wondering. But those softer swearings off. You know, I'm not gonna get loaded at the baby shower. I'm not gonna drink tequila with him because last time, we got into some trouble and I had some spicy tacos. That's absolutely not the worst thing that has happened to me drinking. But you know, those softer swearings off. But at some point, we all reach I'm never going to do it again. But you know what's interesting about this illness is in any other area of my life, my desire to not do it again has an effect. I have sworn off onions and peppers based on the effect that it has. And my ability to say no to onions and peppers has an effect. My desire to not do something carries weight. My desire to not hurt people, my desire to live my life in a certain way, I'm able to do this, but not here. I say I never want to do it again. And in the depth of my soul, I mean it. But it doesn't have an effect. And that is baffling. And so it says this is repeated over and over. And we can say over and 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 over. And unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there is very little hope of his recovery. Very little hope is to say hopeless. See, we're looking for hopeless than hope, hopeless than hope. very little hope, hopeless. And what are we talking about? A psychic change? We're talking about a spiritual awakening. And that is our solution. Now, as Rob put in the chat, psychic, what the heck are we talking about? So psychic, it has to do with the mind and soul. Yeah, I'm so glad when our dictionary definitions lined up. It's fun for me. It's also fun when it doesn't. I just have fun. Fun times in the dictionary. Woo! I don't know. But a psychic means of mind and soul. And so what I need to overcome this illness is a spiritual awakening. What's that? A change in my mind and in my soul. And we're going to see in this next paragraph how we get it. But before we do that, it's a cycle. So it can be helpful, not just to read through it, but to see it, what it looks like, sort of all drawn out. And so what we see here is what's known as the cycle. And so in terms of helping to decide and diagnose step one in myself, what can be really helpful to do is to find examples of my own life of this cycle. And you see, when I see that it is a cycle, I see the hopelessness of my illness. I see this hopelessness of my malady. And the best place to start for examples is the never again, that swearing off, that firm resolution. I will never do this again. Why? Because it's often a definite time that we remember. You know what I mean? It's oftentimes like going to the 12-step fellowship again, going to rehab, going to detox, going to jail, getting out of the hospital. All of those consequence-based things that led us to say, that's it, I'm never going to do it again. And then we look at what happens. See, what happens is I get separated from the substance. I'm never going to do it again. But I'm left with me. And I'm left with that pain, that restless, irritable discontent, that hole in the depth of my soul that nothing will fill. That's what I'm left with. Yeah, absolutely, I can. That's what I'm left with. You know, that emptiness, that loneliness, that pain. And I don't know what's wrong with me. And I'm showing up. It's all I know. I'm showing up at meetings, happy to be here, happy to be sober. But I'm not taking any action and nothing's changing. And I'm in pain. And inevitably, I get a thought, and that thought happens in my mind when I'm as sober as I am today, and my illness is untreated. And it looks like this time will be different. Nobody will know. It looks like F it. I'm miserable. I might as well get drunk or loaded, right? That thought that I'm going to kill myself anyway, so why don't I do this? And it's that thought that tells me this time will be different. That thought that tells me nobody will know. That thought that tells me I can drink, and it is a lie, but I believe the lie. And I take that first drink or that first drug, that sense of ease and comfort. And what sets off in me is the more. And the more I drink, the more I use, the more I need. I can't control the amount that I take, and off I go on that spree, and that spree is any length of time. It can be days, it can be weeks, it can be months, it can be years, but I burn it to the ground again, and I come to, and I, because at some point it stops, at some point I sober up. At some point, I get separated from again, and I come to, and I'm like, that's it. I never want to do this again. I'm filled with that guilt. I'm filled with that shame. I'm filled with that self-hatred and self-loathing that I don't want to look myself in the mirror. I hate who I am, and my life is one that is absolutely unrecognizable for somebody like me. And I say I'm never going to do it again. I'm left with me, and I got nothing to put between me, and I'm in pain, and I'm in misery, and I'm in suffering, and I get a thought, and that thought is this time will be different. Nobody will ever know. And I take that drink, and I needed that. Now off I go, and I burn it to the ground again, and I come to filled with hatred of myself and the things that I've done. And I said, I'm never going to do it again, and I promise you. And I do it again. And you see, when we see this cycle, we can see that I'm hopeless. Like I'm doomed to repeat the desperate experiment of the first drink. You see, what happens, I believe, is that ease and comfort that I get. It treats the spiritual malady. It treats that pain better than anything that I have ever found. And after some time, and for me, I don't think it took very long, but after time, my mind gets warped and it's going to tell me whatever lie it's got to tell me to take that first drink. And you know what happens is the more times I go around that cycle, the more pain I'm in when I'm sober. You know, that spiritual malady, it gets worse, it gets louder, it gets more awful. And what I found is the stronger the mental obsession gets, the louder that voice gets. And I don't know about you, but I've seen it. I've seen it in myself, and I've seen it in people in the rooms where it's like as we go through that cycle, the sprees start to get closer and closer together. You know, when we're, seeing people that are able to make 9 months, then 9 months, then 6 months, and then 3 months, and then for a while they can't make 30 days, and for a while they can't make a week. And see, the more I go around that cycle, the worse it gets. And I have a Spotsy who pointed out, it's for sure a cycle. It's for sure a circle as we draw it out, but in many ways it's also a downward spiral. It's a downward spiral, and it only gets worse. And so how do we get off that cycle? Well, I'm gonna read it, and then we're gonna pop back to the screen share, because that's how we do. Read and screen share. Woo! And it says, on the other hand. And it's strange. And so that is the hopelessness. That is the hopelessness of the cycle. But this is the paragraph of hope. And it says, on the other hand, and strange. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There was a bit of a toilet analogy about our lives, and in the chat, it's not a picture, don't worry. But the metaphor of that, like cycling the drain. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So this is the paragraph of hope. On the other hand, and strange as this may seem to those who do not understand what's a psychic change, spiritual awakening, spiritual experience, that's what we're talking about. A change of our mind and our soul has occurred. The very same person who seemed doomed is just a fancy way of saying hopeless, like in the supervillain Dr. Doom, you can call him Dr. Hopeless. You probably can't, and that would probably be a copyright issue, but that's what we're talking about. He's so hopeless. And who had so many problems, he despaired of ever solving them. Suddenly, it does not take long to get well. We do got a picture of a drain in the chat. It's not inappropriate. You could look at it. Suddenly, it does not take long to get well. And I always emphasize that. It does not take long to get well if I'm new to this thing. It does not take long to get well if I've been around this thing for a while. It does not take long to get well if I've been in and out, or if I am dry and you hear me talking about the spiritual malady and you're like, yeah, that's me, but I haven't touched the substance for a while. It does not take long to get well. Suddenly, finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol. What are we talking about there? The mental obsession is relieved. The mental obsession is removed. And what happens is I feel like that hole in the depth of our soul, my soul, gets filled with that power that I need. I have that spiritual awakening. I feel that ease and comfort sober. See, that's what I need. I need a way to feel that ease and comfort sober. And when I do that, I wouldn't have the insane thought to take that first drink or that first drug. Just like I don't have that insane thought to have peppers. I'm restored to sanity. That pain is relieved with this power. I don't have that insane thought. And so the mental obsession is relieved, is removed. Yeah, Dr. Hopeless. Woo! That could be our off-brand supervillain. On brand. It's on brand. It's not off-brand. It's on brand. Yeah. And so the same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol. Mental obsession is relieved. The only effort necessary. Oh, that's rude. There's going to be effort involved in this? Rude and uncalled for. The only effort necessary being that required to follow a few simple rules. Whoa, we don't like rules. Feel free to cross that out and write 12 steps. The few simple steps. That's what we're talking about. So it is the 12 steps that get us out of that cycle to that place of spiritual awakening. And one of the things that I love is I love bouncing around the big book. Let's pop back to page XXVIII, and we're going to go one paragraph up from where we started. I was saying frothy emotional appeals. Let's go up to the next paragraph because I want to show you guys something. That hopeless and that hope. It's not just happening down the page. It's going to happen across the page. When it says we believe and so suggested a few years ago that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is the manifestation of an allergy, this abnormal physical reaction, that the phenomenon of craving, that I need more, is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. It says these allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all. And once formed the habit and found they cannot break it, once having lost their self-confidence, their reliance upon things human, their problems pile up on them and become astonishingly difficult to solve. So as the result of the inability to control the amount that I take, my problems begin to pile up and pile up and pile up on me. I become overwhelmed and I don't know what to do, but I can't stop myself from taking that first drink. And I'm in that place of hopelessness and human power is not working. Back to XXIX, the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems, he despaired of ever solving them. See, hopeless to hope. And so I'm gonna screen share again, going back to this. So what do I need to do? How do I need to get off this cycle? What I need to do is to get out of the cycle is to take a few simple rules or actions or steps. I need to take the actions of the 12 steps because they allow me to have that spiritual awakening, that spiritual experience, or the entire psychic change. That is how I get off the cycle. And that when I see this laid out so simply, that is what's wrong with me. Lack of control, lack of choice. I know what I need. I need a spiritual awakening, and here is how I get it. And that same sponsee who pointed out that it was a downward spiral, in the cycle of this illness. If I continue to do this work as a way of life, like my life depends on it, that little offshoot, out of the cycle, we get to be rocketed. We're circling the drain. It's like we're sailing upward. If I lean in and do this work, like my life depends on it, because it does. So how I get off this cycle is I take the actions of this 12 steps and they produce a spiritual awakening, that change of my mind and of my soul. And that's what I need. And hopefully, I was going to say, does that make sense? I mean, hopefully it does. You could be like, absolutely not. If not, that's okay too. I get it. And so when I come up with examples for my own life of the cycle, the best place to start is with that never again. Those times and really like those times when I said I was never going to do it again. And then how was I feeling? What was going on within myself? And what was that insane thought that I had, really lensing in on that mental obsession? And of course, we know what happens from there. But when I see the inability that I have to differentiate what's true from what's false, that when I drink and use, I burn my life to the ground. And what's false this time will be different. Nobody will ever know. And I'll just really quickly give an example of the cycle. And buddy, I don't know if you can see the dog, but he's very excited about the cycle, aren't you? Yes. I've been sober longer than you've been alive. I'm not that much of an old timer, by the way. Those old timers that'll be like, I've been sober. No, he's a dog. Anywho, so for me, I was always trying to turn things around. And I wanted to go into school, and I ended up getting into university. Turns out I had not. Well, it was a really easy university to get into, but it turns out I hadn't killed all my brain cells. I must not have been able to kill all my brain cells, because I'd have one brain cell that said, Paige, you can drink, and another brain cell that said, yeah, I can. So I definitely had at least two, and that was enough to get me into university. And that's it. I was never going to do this again. when we talk about the spiritual malady, I didn't know what was wrong with me. I always felt alone and separate and a part of. And I remember being in university, and I hadn't been, kind of off the streets that long. And I felt like I was different and bad, and I couldn't relate to these people, but I couldn't relate to the people that I was with anymore, because I'm trying to turn this thing around. And I felt so apart from and so separate. I'm sure nobody can relate to this. I'm a little bit codependent, and I was in, we can call it a relationship, but that's a lie. It was a codependent hostage situation where we were both in the dumpster. The dumpster's on fire, and we're going off a cliff, that I called a relationship. So I had sworn off, not just for me, but for him. We're done drinking, buddy. He didn't need to give consent. It was fine. We were doing this. So I don't know about you. Anyone that's ever tried to stay sober on your own willpower and just working on school, and followed up by, I'm going to keep him sober too. I was dying on the inside, and I didn't know what was going on. It was just all I knew. And I didn't go to in the States, we were kind of talking about some of the college football teams. Roll Tide, thanks for coming, thanks for helping. We're talking about that. And, I wasn't one of those like keg party, drinking party schools. It was a school for nerds. I know you're shocked by this information. Paige, a nerd? Shocking, appalling. Appalling news. But confession time, I'm a bit of a nerd. So I went to a school for nerds, and we were going to have a LAN party, which actually kind of dates me. We're going to tie a bunch of computers together on a network and play a video game together. It wasn't even going to be a drinking party. And somebody had brought some alcohol, and what was happening before that is somebody made a comment, and it was a word that a derogatory word that you used when you're kind of on the streets and homeless, and I was like, you don't know what that word means, you don't know me, and I was like, F you, F this, and I, without even thinking of the consequences, I took a shot. And that was my mental obsession, that insane thought of F you, you don't know me, you don't know what I went through. I'm drinking at you. It wasn't a conscious I'm drinking at you, but that's what it was. And I take that drink, and it went well. And I helped her. And I think we can guess what happened. I'm going in and out of blackouts, and I'm like, I gotta go smoke some crack. That'll help. And I remember looking into their medicine cabinet, because for some reason that was easier than going to the liquor store to find some mouthwash. Now, that was not my first time trying to find non-beverage alcohol. Now, you don't have to be an alcoholic to drink non-beverage alcohol, or to be an alcoholic, you don't have had to have drank mouthwash or anything like that. But what I will say is only an alcoholic is drinking the mouthwash. You know what I'm saying? And it was just, man, and my boyfriend at the time, who I had sworn off for the both of us, I'm being the responsible adult. I had to call and get him to pick me up, and I was filled with that guilt and shame, and I embarrassed myself, filled with remorse and regret. And I said, I'm never going to do this again. And I meant it. And a week later, I'm at the old back alley. That's for those in Calgary. I'm at the old back alley doing it again. For those that are not from Calgary, actually, I don't need to describe it. You can guess. Back alley, that's the name of the bar. You know what's happening there. Classy. So that was my example of the cycle. One of them. And so when we can, the Calgarians know, you know what's up. And so that's just an example. And when I can see myself in that cycle and that cycle within me, I see the hopelessness of my illness, and I see just how much I need help, and I need this thing. So going back to the reading, it says, men have cried out to me in sincere and despairing appeal, Doctor, I cannot go on like this. I have everything to live for. I must stop, but I cannot. You must help me. That sounds like hopelessness. And I didn't say that to, a doctor, but if I felt that, I have everything to live for. I don't want to do this again. I need your help. I have to stop that. Is that hopelessness? And it says faced with this problem, if a doctor is honest with himself, he must sometimes feel his own inadequacy. that feeling of not enough, that feeling that can't help. Although he gives all that is in him, it is often not enough. And this is an important line. One feels that something more than human power is needed to produce the essential psychic change. I'm beyond human power. I need something more than human power. You know, here's my experience with that. As somebody who has recovered, as somebody who is a sponsor, I'll be honest with you guys. There are times I relate to that. I feel my own inadequacy. And I am a tryhard. If you see my highlighter collection, you know what I mean? I am a tryhard. If you give me an inch of effort, I will go miles to my own detriment. It's an issue. I'm looking at it. On through the columns. Codependency is what that is. But I will bust my butt if you give me an inkling that you want to get well. And I will give everything that I have. And it's not enough because I am but a human power. And what we need is a connection with a power greater than ourselves. That's what we're after. And so this is Dr. Silkworth getting a little bit defensive again. I shouldn't call him out because I get defensive. But this is Dr. Silkworth. Though the aggregate of recoveries resulting from psychiatric effort is considerable. So what he's saying is like, hey, we doctors, we, men of science, we're doing some good stuff. We're not throwing out that. We're doing some good stuff. We physicians must admit we have made little impression upon the problem as a whole. With this illness, we haven't really been able to do much. That's what he's saying. It says many types do not respond to the ordinary psychological approach. And I can look at myself and my experience. Have I tried other approaches? Have I tried psychologists? Have I tried psychiatrists? Have I tried counselors? Have I tried rehabs? Have I tried detoxes? Have I tried maybe going to church? Have I tried these ordinary methods and have they not worked? And if my experience is they have not worked, I might be one of the people that has this illness. And I got some bad news. If I got this illness, the only way I got to get out of it is a spiritual awakening. And the way that we have to reliably produce that is the steps. I'm long about way to say, we might have to do the steps, is what I'm saying. And says, I do not hold with those who believe that alcoholism is entirely a problem of mental control. So talking about the mental obsession, he's pointing to the physical allergy again. I have had many men who had, for example, worked a period of months on some problem or business deal which was to be settled on a certain date favorably to them. What he's talking about is like, you're going to get the job. You're not going to get the divorce. The charges will be dropped, everything's going to be okay. If I'm going to pass the exam, I'm going to, you know what I mean? That the probationary period will be over. All I need to do is not get blackout obliviated. Obliviated is absolutely not a word, but we're using it. Obliterated is, I think, what I was going for, but oblivion, obliterated, put it together. If I said it with enough confidence and didn't point attention to it, we might have been convinced it was a word. But, as long as I don't get blackout, just burning it down. And it says they took a drink a day. They took a drink a day or so prior to the date. And then the phenomenon of craving. That's that physical allergy. You can make that note. That physical allergy at once became paramount to all other interests. Paramount is like of the top of the mountain, of the utmost, the most important. I don't know about you, but my illness is nothing is as important as getting that next one. I start to drink, I start to use, I take that drink and I need a second, and that second demands on 4, and that 4 insists on 8, and that 8 will not relent until I've had 16, and I need another, and nothing is as important as that. And it says, so that the important appointment was not met. These men were not drinking to escape. They had no problems. It was going to work out perfectly for them if they just didn't take a drink. They were drinking to overcome a craving beyond their mental control, that physical allergy. It was beyond our power. And this is what we'll end on tonight. It says there are many situations which arise out of the phenomenon of craving, which cause men to make the supreme sacrifice rather than continue to fight. What we're talking there about is about suicide. The consequences that happen because I burn my life to the ground, that lead us to take our lives and to end our lives. And oftentimes we talk about an alcoholic death. And I think an alcoholic death or an addict death is going to look like liver cirrhosis, liver failure. Maybe it's going to look like a drunk driving accident, but oftentimes we don't think about suicide. And more of these suicides tend to happen sober than in our active illness. That's an important reminder for somebody like me that emotional sobriety is not keener sobriety. It's a minimum requirement. But what I want to end on, because I don't want to end on that hopelessness, is the hope. It is available. It is to each and every one of us. I say that because there's nothing special about me. And I mean this in the most loving way. You are special. You are unique. You're just the most incredible, wonderful people. Nothing special about you either. We can do some steps and have a spiritual awakening. So join us next week as we'll keep plugging away in the doctor's opinion. All righty. Thank you. And I'll stop the recording.